10:45 a.m., Havenport Memorial Hospital. In the director's office, a young doctor stands trembling, tears streaking down her face. "You performed surgery without authorization. You're fired." Her voice shakes as she answers, "I did it because the patient was dying." The director's reply is ice cold. "Leave before I call security." Lena Hart walks out, head bowed, while colleagues watch with quiet sympathy. 5 minutes later, rotor blades thunder through the building. Everyone looks up. A Navy helicopter is landing on the roof. An officer jumps out shouting, "I need Dr. Lena Hart." Silence grips the hospital. Lena Hart, 32, a resident physician and former Navy corpsman, now works civilian duty at Memorial Hospital. Dr. Warren Hale, the rigid hospital director, believes procedures matter more than people. Lieutenant Ethan Cole, 38, a Navy SEAL officer, once survived because of her. Years earlier, Lena had been a combat medic at Kandahar Air Base, performing emergency surgery on Cole after an explosion wounded dozens. She'd operated on him without supervision. When she returned home, she left military life behind, determined to start fresh as a civilian doctor. But hospital corridors were nothing like the battlefield. Everything was wrapped in policies, paperwork, and chains of command. Colleagues whispered that she was impulsive, disrespectful of rules. One morning, during an emergency shift, an elderly patient went into cardiac arrest before the attending physician arrived. Seeing the pulse flatline, Lena acted without hesitation. Open chest cardiac massage, a procedure almost never allowed without permission. The heart restarted, and the man lived. But Dr. Hale's fury filled the room. "You violated protocol. I saved a life. No one asked you to." That afternoon, he signed her termination papers. She packed her things silently. Stethoscope in the bag, name badge off the lanyard. A young intern murmured, "Dr. Hart, what you did was incredible. That man's alive because of you." She gave a faint smile. "And I'm jobless because of it. Fair? Fair doesn't exist here, only rules." Walking once more through the emergency ward, she passed patients she'd treated all year. Some waved goodbye, unaware she'd been fired. In the locker room, she sat staring at her white coat hanging on its hook, the one she'd worn with pride, the symbol of everything she'd earned since leaving the service. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "How's your day going, honey?" She typed back, "Just another day in paradise." She couldn't tell her yet, not until she knew what came next. Heading for the exit, she met Dr. Hale again, flanked by 2 administrators. "Dr. Hart, this isn't personal. It's about maintaining standards." She stopped, met his eyes. "Standards or control? From here, they look the same. You can't just do whatever you want. And you can't let people die while you wait for permission to save them." His face turned crimson. "This conversation is over." "Yes," she said softly. "It is." Outside, rain began to fall. She stood beneath the awning, watching ambulances rush in and out. This was her world, chaos and urgency, life balanced against death. And now she'd been cast out of it. A security guard she knew approached. "Doc, I'm sorry. That man you saved this morning, he's my wife's uncle. You gave our family more time." She smiled through tears. "Tell him to take care of himself." "I will. And Doc, you're one of the good ones. Don't forget that." She walked to her car, sank into the driver's seat, and finally cried. Not from grief, but from exhaustion, from years spent proving she belonged, only to be told she didn't. Her military dog tags swung from the rearview mirror, clinking softly in the breeze through the open window. She whispered to them, to the memory of who she used to be, "Did I make the right choice?" Rain hammered harder against the roof of Lena's car as she whispered, "Did I make the right choice?" She sat motionless for 10 long minutes, the day's weight pressing on her shoulders. Then her phone rang, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Dr. Hart?" a woman's trembling voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "This is Grace Lynn. You saved my husband this morning, the cardiac arrest patient." Lena's breath caught. "How is he?" "He's awake, talking. He told me to find you and say thank you." The woman's voice broke. "You gave me my husband back. You gave our children their father. I don't care what anyone says. You're a hero." Tears filled Lena's eyes. "Tell him to rest. Follow his doctor's orders." "I will. And doctor, thank you. Thank you for being brave." The call ended, leaving Lena in silence, those words echoing in her mind. Thank you for being brave. Later, a nurse would recall how she left quietly. No crying, no arguing, just bowed her head and whispered, "I hope they survive." That was all she cared about, saving lives, even when it meant defying an entire system. As Lena stepped through the hospital gates, rain drenched her scrubs. She sat on the front steps, her hands still stained with dried blood from that morning's procedure. "Maybe I don't belong anywhere anymore," she muttered. Then, suddenly, the roar of helicopter blades tore through the storm. A gray UH-60 Blackhawk descended toward the hospital rooftop, scattering security staff. Everyone looked skyward in shock. From the cabin, Lieutenant Ethan Cole, now a Navy SEAL officer, stepped out with two others. He shouted into his radio, "Is Dr. Lena Hart here?" Doctors pointed frantically. "She was just fired." "Then get her back here, now!" he barked. Moments later, Lena was escorted to the roof, frozen in disbelief. "Ethan, what's happening?" "A chopper went down at sea. The pilot's got multiple fractures and chest trauma. We need a combat medic, someone who's been in the field. I know only one person who qualifies." Over the hospital radio, Dr. Hale's voice crackled. "She's no longer employed here." Ethan answered sharply, "Sir, this is a military requisition. Dr. Hart is being activated under emergency Navy protocols." Without hesitation, Lena climbed aboard the helicopter, secured her harness, eyes suddenly sharp again. As the rotors thundered to life, she looked back at the hospital, the place that had just cast her out. "I'll be back," she whispered, but not to apologize. Through the windows, doctors, nurses, and patients gathered at the rooftop door, watching her disappear into the gray sky. Inside the cabin, Ethan handed her a medical kit. Just like old times. Old times didn't include being fired an hour before deployment, she said with a wry smile. "The Navy doesn't care about politics," he replied. "They care about who can save lives under pressure, and that's you." She checked the supplies. Standard combat med gear, limited, no surgical suite, no imaging, no backup team. "What's the injury status?" "Pilot took shrapnel to the chest during an emergency landing. He's stable but fading fast. The ship's medical officer's overwhelmed. They need you." "How far?" 40 nautical miles, 20 minutes out." She nodded as instinct replaced doubt. The bureaucracy, the fear, the exhaustion, all fell away. This was her world again. As they flew over the churning Pacific, the radio crackled. "Black Hawk inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Patient status, critical." When they touched down on the carrier deck, sailors surged forward amid the disciplined chaos of military life. Lena was rushed to the medical bay. The pilot lay pale, breath shallow, blood oxygen dropping. "Doctor, I've tried everything," the ship's medic said. "We're losing him." Lena examined the wound, penetrating chest trauma, possible cardiac tamponade. "I need to open his chest, now. Without imaging, without a full team? We don't have time." The medic hesitated, then stepped back. "You have command." She scrubbed in, gloved up, and began. The procedure was perilous. One wrong move could end him, but her hands were steady. Years of battlefield instinct guided every cut. She drained the blood, released pressure, repaired the torn tissue. 15 minutes later, the monitor beeped. Strong pulse, stable vitals. Applause broke out across the bay. Ethan stood in the doorway, eyes shining. "You did it again. You saved a soldier's life." She peeled off her gloves, voice calm but tired. "It's what I do." The ship's captain entered, stern and grizzled. "Doctor, I've seen field medicine for 30 years, but that was exceptional. The Navy owes you a debt. This man's got a wife and 2 kids in Virginia. Because of you, they'll see him again." Lena nodded, humbled by the weight of those words. A young sailor approached, awe in his eyes. "Ma'am, I was there when you operated. How did you stay so calm?" She saw her younger self in him, nervous, uncertain. "Fear's normal. Panic's a choice. I focused on what had to be done, not what could go wrong." He nodded slowly, memorizing every word. Meanwhile, back at Havenport Memorial, news vans were already pulling in. The story was out. Fired doctor saves Navy pilot in emergency at sea surgery. Dr. Hale stood in his office, staring at the live broadcast of the helicopter landing. As Lena stepped out onto the carrier deck, she was met by a full honor guard salute from the Navy crew. Back at Havenport Memorial, Dr. Warren Hale's phone rang. It was the hospital board chairman. "Warren, we need to talk about your decision this morning." On the ship, a reporter had somehow gained access and approached Lena. "Dr. Hart, do you have anything to say to the hospital that fired you?" She paused, then said calmly, "I don't regret saving lives. I only regret that they forgot why we became doctors in the first place." The clip went viral within hours. A nurse at the hospital later recalled, "Everyone ran to the roof to watch her board that helicopter. The director stood speechless. For the first time, I saw someone fly away and make everyone left behind bow their heads in shame." The truth was out. The one humiliated had become the hero. 3 days after the rescue, Lena received a letter from the Secretary of the Navy, commending her for extraordinary valor in humanitarian service. The hospital board held an emergency meeting to review Dr. Hale's decision. News outlets across the country ran the story. Doctor fired for saving patient, then saves Navy pilot hours later. Public outrage grew. Advocacy groups protested outside Havenport Memorial. Former patients came forward with stories of her compassion and skill. Dr. Hale was summoned before the board, sitting alone at a long table facing 12 members. The chairman began. "Dr. Hale, can you explain your reasoning for terminating Dr. Hart?" "She violated protocol. She performed a procedure without authorization from an attending physician. And the patient survived." "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point, doctor. The patient lived because she acted. What would have happened if she hadn't?" Hale shifted in his seat. "Hypotheticals aren't relevant." Another board member interjected. "We have testimony from 3 nurses and 2 physicians stating that without Dr. Hart's intervention, the patient would have died within minutes. The attending was delayed in traffic." Should she have waited for him? To let the patient die? The room went silent. Then another member leaned forward. "This hospital was founded on a principle: do no harm. But there's another one just as important: do everything possible to help. Dr. Hart lived that principle. You punished her for it." Hale's voice rose. "I was protecting the institution." "No," came the reply. "You were protecting bureaucracy. There's a difference." 4 tense hours later, the board gave him 2 choices: resign with dignity or be terminated for cause. He chose resignation. The following day, the board invited Lena back to the hospital, not as a resident, but as director of emergency medicine. She faced the same people who'd once allowed her firing. "Why should I come back?" she asked. The chairman replied honestly, "Because we were wrong. Because this hospital needs someone who remembers why it exists. Because patients deserve better than what we've given them. And the protocols that got you fired? We're rewriting them. We're calling it the Heart Protocol. He continued, in life-threatening emergencies, when no attending physician is present, senior residents with combat medical experience are authorized to make critical decisions. Lena considered that. It's not about me. It's about making sure no doctor ever has to choose between a patient's life and their career again. Exactly, she accepted. On one condition, full autonomy over emergency operations. They agreed. Her first day back, the halls were lined with staff applauding as she walked through. Some cried, others saluted, honoring her service. Not everyone joined in. A few senior physicians loyal to Hale stood at the back, arms crossed. One of them, Dr. Laura Kent, a 20-year veteran, approached afterward. Dr. Hart, a word. Of course. They stepped into a quiet consultation room. I respect what you did out there, truly, but you need to understand something. This hospital has protocols for a reason. Hale may have been harsh, but he wasn't completely wrong. Go on. If every doctor starts making unilateral decisions, we'll have chaos. Medicine needs order, hierarchy, consensus. Patients need doctors who act, yes, but within structure. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, people die. Protocols protect us from liability, from guilt, from ourselves. Lena met her gaze steadily. I've held dying soldiers in my arms. I've made choices with mortars falling around me. I know death, but they don't die on my watch because I was too afraid to act, or too buried in paperwork to save them. Dr. Kent studied her for a long moment. Then her tone softened. You remind me of myself 30 years ago, before the system wore me down. Don't let it happen to you. Keep that fire. We need it. She walked out, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts. In her new office, Lena found a framed photo on the desk, a picture of the Navy pilot she'd saved, standing with his family. Attached was a note. Because of you, I get to watch my daughter grow up. Thank you for being brave. Because of you, I get to watch my daughter grow up. Thank you for being brave. Commander Mark Rivers. That evening, Ethan stopped by the hospital. Director Hart, he teased, has a nice ring to it. She smiled faintly. Feels strange. A week ago I was packing up my things. Now I'm running the department. You earned it, he said. Not because of one dramatic rescue, but because of every patient you fought for. Every time you chose what was right, even when it cost you. She turned to the window, city lights glowing over Havenport. You know the hardest part? She asked. Forgiving them. Not Hale. He made his choice, but everyone else who watched and said nothing. They're human, Ethan said softly. They were scared. So was I, she replied. But I still acted. That's the difference. That's why they need someone unafraid now. He nodded. She continued. On that carrier, when I was working on the pilot, I wasn't thinking about politics or procedure. I just knew someone deserved to live. That's the only calculation that mattered. Ethan smiled. Welcome back to what medicine should be. The next morning, Lena called an all-staff meeting. 60 doctors, nurses, and techs filled the emergency department. I'm not here to punish anyone, she began. I'm here to build something better, a place where excellence and compassion coexist, where protocols serve patients, not the other way around. A senior nurse raised her hand. Dr. Hart, what if we make mistakes? Then we learn, Lena answered, but we'll make mistakes trying to save lives, not trying to protect ourselves. Another doctor spoke up. What about administration? What if they push back? Let them, she said. At the end of every shift, we'll ask one question. Did we do everything possible for our patients? If the answer's yes, then we did our job. Everything else is noise. The room fell silent. Then applause erupted. First one person, then the entire staff. Over the next month, Havenport Memorial's emergency department transformed. Response times improved, patient satisfaction soared, and, most importantly, not one life was lost to delayed treatment. Meanwhile, Dr. Hale took a job at a small clinic in another state, his reputation beyond repair. Sometimes one act of courage redefines what's right for everyone. 6 months later, the hospital adopted the heart protocol system-wide, not just in emergency medicine. It empowered medical professionals at every level to make critical decisions when lives were on the line, without fear of punishment. Medical schools across the country began studying the case. Harvard invited Lena to speak about balancing procedure with humanity. Standing before 200 future doctors, she said, "The day I was fired, I thought my career was over. But I learned this. Your career isn't defined by your title or your institution. It's defined by the lives you touch and the courage you show when everything's on the line." A student asked, "Dr. Hart, what if we're wrong? What if we break protocol and the patient dies?" Lena paused. "Then you live with that. But at least you tried. I've made split-second calls that saved lives and others that didn't. But I can look in the mirror knowing I acted, that fear and bureaucracy didn't decide for me." Another student asked, "How do we know when to break the rules?" "You don't break them lightly," she said. "You break them when the alternative is watching someone die. When a rule serves the institution but betrays the patient, that's when you decide who you're really serving." The lecture went viral. Doctors and nurses worldwide reached out, sharing stories of being punished for doing the right thing. Lena founded a non-profit, Doctors Without Hesitation, to champion medical autonomy and patient-first care. Back at Havenport Memorial, the culture kept evolving. Young doctors felt empowered. Veterans found renewed purpose. Patients felt truly cared for. One evening, an elderly woman arrived with severe chest pain. The attending was in surgery, but a young resident recognized a massive heart attack. Under the old rules, he would have waited. Under the heart protocol, he acted, performing an emergency catheterization. The woman survived. When Lena heard, she found him afterward. "You saved her life," she said. "I was terrified," he admitted. "But I remembered what you said. Protocols serve patients, not the other way around." "You did exactly right," she replied. His eyes filled with tears. "A year ago, I might have waited, and she would have died. Because of what you fought for, I had the confidence to act. I had the confidence to act." That moment crystallized everything for Lena. It was no longer just about her. It was about building a culture where the next generation could be brave without fear of punishment. Late one night, Ethan found her in her office, still reviewing patient files. "You know," he said, leaning on the doorway, "you're kind of a legend now." She laughed. "A legend who still works night shifts and drinks awful hospital coffee." "The best kind of legend," he replied. Setting her files aside, she sighed. "It's funny. I spent years trying to fit into the system, follow the rules, earn respect the right way. But it wasn't until I got kicked out that I realized the system needed to change, not me. Systems always need people willing to challenge them, or break them, and build something better." 3 months into her new role, Lena received an invitation to speak at the American Medical Association's annual conference. The topic: Patient-Centered Care in Emergency Medicine. Standing backstage, she felt nervous for the first time in months. This wasn't surgery, it was persuasion. Politics, hearts, and minds. Dr. Laura Kent found her there. "You'll do fine," she said. "Just speak from the heart, like you did with us." "What if they don't listen?" "Then they're fools," Laura smiled. "But I don't think they will be. You've got something most doctors have forgotten, the ability to remember why we started this journey." When Lena stepped onto the stage, polite applause filled the hall. She looked out at hundreds of physicians, administrators, and policymakers. "Good morning," she began. "My name is Dr. Lena Hart, and 3 months ago, I was fired for saving a patient's life." The room fell silent. If you believe leadership should inspire, not intimidate, share this story. Let's change what courage means in medicine. 2 years later, Lena stood on the rooftop of Havenport Memorial, the same place the Navy helicopter had landed that day. Now it had been converted into a medevac helipad with a plaque that read, "Heart Landing, where courage meets compassion." She ran her fingers along the cool metal, remembering the moment everything changed. Commander Ethan Cole, now on leave, joined her. "They're calling you the helicopter doctor in Navy circles," he said. She chuckled. "Could be worse nicknames. Could be better ones, too. But that one's earned." Together they looked out at Havenport's glittering skyline. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "The chaos, the controversy, all of it." She thought for a long moment. "No. That pilot I saved, he sent me a photo last month, his daughter's 5th birthday. He's there, smiling, holding her. That moment doesn't exist without that day. Every choice I made, every rule I broke, every consequence I faced, it all led to that little girl having her father at her birthday. That's worth it. That's one hell of a legacy." "It's not about legacy," she said softly. "It's about doing what's right when everyone's watching, and what's necessary when no one is." Below them, an ambulance screeched to a halt. The ER doors burst open as a trauma team sprinted out. The rhythm of life, crisis and response, pain and healing, was in motion again. "I need to get back," she said. "Go save some lives, Doc." Ethan smiled. She turned halfway down the stairs. "Thank you, for that day, for believing I was worth fighting for." "You didn't need me to fight for you," he replied. "You just needed a helicopter. The rest was all you." Back in the emergency department, organized chaos ruled. A multi-vehicle accident had brought in 6 patients. Lena moved through the controlled storm with steady focus, directing teams, making calls, guiding hands. A young resident ran up, panicked. "Dr. Hart, patient 3 needs surgery, but the OR isn't ready. I don't know if I should—" "What does the patient need?" she asked evenly. "Immediate intervention, or he'll bleed out." "Then you already know what to do. I'll back you up. Go." The resident nodded, determination replacing fear. Hours later, when the crisis had passed and every patient was stable, Lena sat alone in her office. On the wall hung her Navy commendation, her medical degree, and a photograph of that first helicopter landing. She opened her journal and wrote, "Today, I watched a young doctor make a life-saving decision without hesitation, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she knew hesitation costs lives. This is what we build. This is what matters." Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Dr. Hart, you don't know me, but you saved my father on that carrier 2 years ago. He walked me down the aisle today. Thank you for giving us that moment." Lena stared at the message, tears glistening. This was why. This was always why. Outside her window, another helicopter approached, red lights flashing across the night. She smiled faintly. When you hear the blades turning, it means someone's life is waiting. She grabbed her coat and headed for the ER. Always ready, always willing, always there. If you believe courage still lives in everyday heroes, subscribe to Major Tom's Tales. Real people, real stories.